Hartmut Winkler, energy analyst. Prof, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. I suppose for those who want to keep their lights on, it is certainly good news that we will not be having load shedding this summer. But for those like yourself who are looking closely into these matters of energy, I'm sure there are some other deeper issues that are coming to the surface. One of which is the minister says, well, aggregate demand is being met by aggregate generation. It's a very nice way, in a sense, others of saying that there has really not been essentially an increase in generation in the country in terms of more electricity is now being produced. But we are meeting the aggregate demand and the aggregate generation, and therefore is performing at that level.
Right. First of all, let's be very careful about saying that there won't be load shedding. It's not expected. The situation is looking good, but a number of factors can conspire to suddenly create problems at various power stations, as happened earlier this year a number of times. So let's not say that there will not be load shedding, but simply that the likelihood of load shedding is going to be certainly a lot lower than it was 2 years ago. But let's then not be too harsh on Eskom. It's really one of those cases where you can never really predict when you are going to experience a problem. And if you have several problems happening at once, then you are going to go into a bit of a crunch.
Right.
As far as the generating capacity is concerned, yes, Eskom has definitely been helped by the fact that that Kusile especially, but also the one unit at Medupi, which was down, are now all running. Now that accounts for about 3 to 4 stages of load shedding better than would have otherwise been the case. So that's helped them, and also just the fact that the coal power stations are by and large being a little bit more reliable than they were. Not much, but a little bit more, and that's already making quite a huge difference. But where they, as you say, that one of the factors that Eskom is going to have to look at is this actually increasing generating capacity. Not very much has happened on that front, except for these Kusile and Medupi units coming back. If they really want to, a few years down the line, shut down a number of the old coal power stations, they are going to need something to replace those.
Yeah.
And we are going quite slowly on that front. And that's where there might be problems, not in the immediate future, but a couple of years down the line.
Yeah. Others are saying this has been helped by and large by the slowing down of the economy and therefore a slowing down in industrialization, meaning that a number of firms have either pulled out of operations or have not expanded their operations as they should. So essentially not a good picture. But two, the issues that the minister is raising, rising tariffs and demand suppression or load reduction, if you like, has been a limiting factor for bringing in new people into the space of demand. And so hence, that's why things are proceeding as they are.
Yes, well, Eskom's big problem is that at the moment they are selling less electricity than they would have projected, say, 10 years ago or so. So overall, the amount of, while Eskom is producing enough electricity to meet the current demand, its problem is that the demand has stabilized or even gone down. And that's an issue because that's where Eskom ultimately gets its money from. So there's a number of factors why that's the case. Certainly that the fact that the economy is not doing wonderfully, so that's one aspect. Increasing electricity prices will always have the effect that people will now increasingly start looking for ways of saving electricity. So that too will have brought down the demand. But the other big factor is that a lot of businesses, the households even have now moved to installing solar energy, rooftop solar energy as a backup. So that by now would have accounted for roughly the equivalent of, say, 2 or 3 stages of load shedding. But that is all electricity that in the past they would have gotten from Eskom. And so that's ultimately lower sales for Eskom.
Yeah.
So that's really where Eskom's existential challenge comes in. Right now, they're still fine, but yes, they have. They're forever looking for more money. They're keeping up the current facilities will cost them a lot of money. but they really need to look at very carefully their business model. They're not going to be able to get by on this forever.
Yeah.
They gradually are going to lose customers, and so that effectively they need to do something now. Otherwise, a few years down the line, 10 years down the line, Eskom will be really struggling.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. What does that mean, that existential challenge, as you put it, to the infrastructure program and operations at Eskom? I mean, there is already a challenge of underinvestment, for example, in the distribution network. So if consumption is down, as we are putting it, which means less people are buying because they're generating it on their roofs, or people are now price sensitive, so they are switching off their geysers and so on and so forth. What does that mean in terms of that infrastructure program, and what does it mean on the profitability, or at least staying afloat operations-wise for Eskom?
Yeah, well, what Eskom really needs to do is what Telkom did when cellular phones started coming out. Before cellular phones, there was really no option that consumers had, and Telkom could do pretty much as they liked. But once they came in, and it just became so much more convenient to use cell phones, Telkom had to adjust its business model. How exactly Eskom that's going to do? Well, it's got a number of options, but they're all going to be difficult, and they're all going to require quite a few changes from their current operating model. I've noticed they've started engaging themselves in trying to build some renewable energy plants. Before that, Eskom had done very, very little. They'd really relied on independent power producers or private projects to do that. So as a result, Eskom's renewable energy generation is very, very low by international standards. They could up that substantially. They have, in a sense, got an advantage because they are, if you like, the regulator. There's already a lot of talk of using Eskom property and so on to develop, say, solar plants or whatever. Batteries, which are becoming ever more important in international electricity management. And they effectively allow you to store energy from solar and wind devices for periods when weather conditions are not suitable. Eskom will have to try and look at that much more carefully than they are. The other problem Eskom, of course, has is that they're really struggling to collect the funds due to them. And it's not just from the individual users, but from the municipalities. And that is going to require a political solution. Effectively, Eskom said so today during the press conference. The minister also acknowledged that Eskom can't just go to a city like Johannesburg and say, well, you haven't paid the money, therefore we're going to switch off the electricity to you. That's what a normal company would do when faced in that situation. So ultimately, they are going to rely very much on government backing them up on this, because government's effectively got two options. They can either help them recuperate as much funding as they can from municipalities, or they're just going to have to start keep on throwing in more and more money at them.
Yeah. Talk about government helping them up. The minister there saying, well, look, we are discussing what are we going to do about these high tariffs, and everybody must chip in, jump in, bring about some solutions. We've got some that we are thinking about, and maybe more people can chip in. Others are saying, well, unless government is going to come with a stimulus that is going to help with the disparities, if the economy is stimulated, people have got more money, suppose they wouldn't mind paying more for electricity. That's one way. The other one, come up with a broader strategy for people to be able to get into renewables or have their own ways of generating so that it can bring the cost down. What other options do you see them having?
Yeah, well, with where the renewable uptake has been very big is especially with entities such as, say, shopping malls or office blocks, largely because those use most of the electricity during the day. So solar backup is really ideal for them. And that's where most of the solar developments in the country have gone. Rooftop development on households and that has been very slow in South Africa compared to other countries. I guess it's just that the initial cost outlay. So anyone who does want to install solar on their roof is just going to, will often just say, hang on, I just don't have the money right now to buy batteries, components which are still quite expensive. the government has, especially at the height of the load shedding crisis, they did make all these tax breaks and so on available. Did it make a huge difference? Well, it did while load shedding was bad, but now I don't see a lot of people making use of or trying to grow their solar installations on the roof. It seems to have, well, it's not quite stopped, but it's certainly slowed down quite substantially. So if one wants, as happens in some other countries now, installing a solar panel on the roof comes part of a new house building plan, the way you would make sure that there's a toilet or water access. Some places like California, for example, that's already a regulation. If you build a new house, you've got to include a solar on the roof. Are we going to get there to this point? Well, I think we're still a long way off. Whatever regulatory matters have been attempted here have proved to be quite difficult and complicated, and have usually been challenged some way or other. Like recently, Eskom, trying to make it difficult for self-generation, and we've had these sort of cases, and so I don't see a very quick solution to that in mind. But that seems to be one. I think one just needs to look at the international picture. Usually, we tend to follow what happens internationally a few years after it's happened there.
Any deficiencies, any difficulties in expanding the distribution network?
Well, they've already announced a couple of projects that they will be building. So especially some of the lines connecting the Northern Cape to Gauteng. There's a couple of projects where they're now actively looking for investors to take part in that. But yes, again, that's going to cost. It won't be quick, and I think it's just in general with all this infrastructure development. Do we have enough, building companies here? Because these are not, small projects. These are quite significant. You need to have a fair amount of experience and resources to take on some of these projects. That I think is also partly the reason why one maybe doesn't see some of the, say, solar farms and wind farms expanding as quickly as approval has been granted. If one compares, say, what was happening here to a country like China, in China, will install the kind of work we've done here in the last year. It will take them just a couple of days. That's how fast solar and wind and even other energy generating technologies are growing in China. So it can be done, but whether one can, do that here, that's going to be difficult. It's whether one just simply, ask for assistance from China, which is what's happening in quite a few places in Africa, really, like Botswana, Zambia. They're all having Chinese projects to help them along. So it can be done, but at the moment, I think we are slightly constrained by, the availability of companies able to do these projects.
Prof, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Professor Hartmut Winkler, energy analyst, there following the announcement by the energy provider, Eskom, or power generation company, that is Eskom, if you like, giving us an update on the upcoming season and its operational performance.